listening to Inside the Rings, your ultimate podcast destination for everything related to the Olympic movement. Here's your host, my dad, John Hawkins.
All right, hey everybody, it's John Hawkins. Welcome back to Inside the Rings, the podcast that takes you inside the Olympic movement. As I mentioned, I'm John Hawkins, your host. Today, we get the pleasure of having Ted Morris, the Executive Director of US Speedskating, join us. Ted, welcome to the show.
John, thanks so much for having me. This is a real pleasure.
It's our pleasure, for sure. So let's start off. What's been happening in the world of speed skating lately?
Well, I mean, for starters, our team is absolutely crushing it right now, which is just amazing. Despite being a really small sport in this country, we're having fantastic success. Last year, we won 11 World Championship medals, which is an all-time high.
Wow.
We have a kid, Jordan Stoles, who's 20 years old and is pretty much the second coming of Eric Heiden.
Wow.
I think every 40 years, US Speedskating gets a gift from the gods, and we got another one here with Jordan Stoll. So he's won 7 consecutive gold medals at the World Championships.
Oh my goodness!
2 World Championships. So he's crushing it, and that's just elevating the whole team. When you have a kid like that, I think everybody else looks at him and says, "Oh, he's nothing special. If he can do it, I can do it." And so the team really seems to be feeding off of that on the long track side. And on the short track side, yeah, we won 5 World Championship medals there in the Netherlands, which was more than any other team in the world, which was phenomenal.
Even the Netherlands?
Even the Netherlands in
Wow.
short track. Not in long track, but
Okay.
in short track.
Yeah.
And we have Kristen Santos Griswold, who won 5 World Championship medals on her own she won in every single individual event and the 2 relays. So she's crushing it too. So it's really great. And they've picked up right from where they left off last year. And, we're already close to 40 World Cup podiums this year and just entering the second half of the season. So athletically, things are going really well.
Good. Tell me, I'm going to ask you probably a question that we probably could leave to the end, but I think it's hot. As we look at Milan Cortina, forecast in about a year, how do you see, our team compared to the rest of the world?
I think we're in really good shape, but I also want to be very cautious about saying that because my first year with the organization was I came in September of 2013, so right before the Sochi Olympics, and we were crushing it then. And a lot of people thought we could win 10 medals at the Olympic Games, and we ended up only winning 1.
Wow.
And I learned a valuable lesson. Don't let your head get too big.
Sure.
A lot can happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think, listen, we're definitely on the right trajectory. And, we have some superstar athletes, but you just never know. It's we're a team, but obviously so many of these events are individual races. And so, if you have an injury or an illness, it can really hurt your chances to potentially take home several medals. But if, you lose an athlete to injury or illness on a football team or a basketball team, you still got the rest of the team that can potentially pick up the slack and carry you to a championship. So that's the hard part. But I definitely feel very, very good about where our team is. And obviously we're super, super stoked to be going back to, going to Italy for the Olympics. We've really been, I look at it as we've really had 3 Olympics in Asia because we were in Sochi, which is pretty much Asia.
Yep.
And then Korea and then Beijing. So I think our kids are super excited about competing in Europe, being that much closer and obviously not dealing with the huge time change that we were dealing with with those other 3 Olympics.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about you for a minute. Tell me about your background. What led you to becoming the executive director of US Speedskating?
Yeah, so my journey really started back in New York City when I was working for a big advertising agency called BBDO, and this was in the 90s. And Visa was my major client, And this is when obviously Visa was a big player in the Olympics. And so I got very involved in the Olympic space with them, actually doing television agreements with the networks like CBS at that time, who was carrying the Olympics.
Yeah.
Hard to believe, right?
Yeah.
A lot of kids probably don't remember that CBS.
Right.
So I was working on Visa, and I did a deal with the US ski team because Visa was a sponsor of them. And one thing led to another, and they made me an offer to come work for them. And
Wow.
so I joined the US ski team as the marketing director in 1998. And then I stayed in New York for 1 year just to make sure it was the right move. And then, moved out to Park City in 1999 and been here ever since. And so I worked with the US ski team for 12 years, became the chief marketing officer there. And then I left the ski team after the 2010 Olympics, and I went to work for a sports marketing agency that was based in New York, but they were nice enough to let me stay out in Utah.
Yeah.
And I just have to go back to New York every 4 to 5 weeks, which wasn't the worst thing.
Right.
And so I was the senior vice president for Olympics, working with both clients and also with national governing bodies, which we are and ski and snowboard are. And one of my first clients was US Speedskating.
Oh, okay.
And so that's kind of how I got involved with them. And then that was the year, I don't know if you remember this, but it was pretty wild, 2012, 13. US Speedskating had a situation where we had a Korean coach of our short track team. Mm-hmm. He was actually Apollo Ono's coach, in 2010. And he got in trouble because he instructed one of his athletes, one of our team members, to tamper with a competitor's blade before.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so that was a low moment for US Speedskating. Yeah. And because of that and an assortment of other things they were going through, they started looking for a new executive director. And I thought it was a great opportunity because you think about what drew me to it so much was just the legendary Olympic athletes that come from this sport. Bonnie Blair, Dan Jansen, Eric Heiden, Apollo Ono, Shawnee Davis, Derek Parra. I mean, really a lot of athletes that achieved first in the Olympic space, not just in speed skating, but the Olympic space. And so I thought there was a lot of upside. And I love the sport. I still think to this day, the short track relay is my favorite event in the Olympics, period.
It's incredible how they keep all of that straight, whose turn it is, what lap it is, all of that, right? It's pretty incredible.
It really is. And they don't knock each other down all the time either, right? Because they're all out there on the ice at the same time, and it's mayhem.
Yeah.
But it's a great event.
I can see why that would be your favorite event. It's like organized chaos on ice.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you've been in the role for 11, 12 years now or so. What do you feel is your most significant achievements during your tenure?
Wow, that's a tough one. It's sometimes it's hard to take a step back and look backwards like this at this point in my career. It's one of the things I love about being in the Olympics is that everything's on these 4-year increments. And, it allows you to kind of press stop and pause and look forward. But honestly, I haven't looked back as much. But that being said, I think what I'm most proud of is that I, really joined an organization that was in a pretty major state of distress. And we were close to $1 million in debt. And there wasn't the board was dysfunctional, and I think we've obviously climbed out of debt and now in the black as an organization. We fund our athletes at a higher level. We built this beautiful building, the Speed Factory for our athletes to train in. So what I would say to answer that question is, what I feel most proud about is that we've taken what was a pretty amateurish organization and made it a professional organization.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And I think you and I have probably talked about this before. The biggest challenge that our athletes have in pursuing this sport is the lack of money and support that's in it.
Yeah.
And we're asking these kids at 18 years old to pack up and, leave Washington, D.C., New Jersey, Washington State, come to Salt Lake City, train for a chance to be an Olympian, maybe even more remotely, win an Olympic medal.
Yeah.
Dedicate the next 4 to 8 years of your life to do that. And you're not really getting compensated. You're not necessarily getting an education. That's a lot to ask in this day and age.
Yeah.
And that's what inspires me every day at work, because I know these athletes have done that. They've given up these dreams to pursue this Olympic dream. And it's a lot to ask for them. So I'm constantly focused on what more we can provide them to give them the tools to succeed, not just on the ice, but in life. And I think that's probably what I'm most proud about, is that we've done that. We've done that with the Speed Factory. We've done that from a staffing standpoint. We've done that to some levels with athlete stipends. We've formed a partnership with Salt Lake Community College so we can get them education for free. That's right now, I would say that's what I'm most proud of.
I didn't know about the partnership with Salt Lake Community College. That's really cool.
It is fantastic. They've been phenomenal. I'm essentially letting our athletes have school for free.
Yeah.
And it's a great runway, right? I mean, even if they're not getting the 4-year education, just to get those 2 years under their belt. So then when they stop skating, they only have 2 years to go rather than starting from scratch. And then we've got a fair amount of athletes that have graduated college that are still taking continuing education classes.
Wow, that's cool.
Salt Lake Community College.
So, that's really cool. I love that idea that they continue to grow their professional side as well with courses.
Exactly.
That's a good, I like that legacy that you've created there for you. What do you see kind of, looking forward? You talked about the quadrennial or whatever it's called, and this next one's coming to an end next year. And then you have 4 more years to look forward to in France. But what do you see as kind of your strategy moving into the next, 5 years or so, and then maybe beyond that?
Well, something you're all too familiar with, obviously, the 34 Olympics coming back is just an immense opportunity for us. And a once really, you could say, lifetime opportunity, not just generational, because even if you look back 20 years ago when we hosted Salt Lake City, we didn't have US Speedskating's infrastructure here in Salt Lake City when we got the bid. Yeah, we weren't even here in 2002 officially. We didn't move out here till 2005 or 6, I think. So to me, that's the biggest opportunity. We got to increase the attention on the stories of our athletes and how difficult this journey is to get more support. And I'm always, I'm blown away by how popular the Olympics are in Salt Lake City. Yeah. And you see some of the numbers of the fandom, and it's fantastic. But I think there's a lack of understanding on how difficult the journey is for these athletes. And most Utahns don't understand that, oh man, these athletes aren't professional. They're not getting paid a salary. They're actually, trying to figure this out on their own. We got to increase the attention on that story, and hopefully, be a runway for us to get more donations. And then also, I think the huge opportunity is actually on the sponsorship side of things, and getting Utah companies involved with the national governing bodies that are here. Because the one key here is, you can do a partnership with us for X amount of dollars, but if you did it with the Olympic Committee, it's going to, add 8 zeros at the end of that, right? Yeah. So it's an awesome opportunity for mid-sized Utah companies to get involved in the Olympics without having to spend Olympic dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think as you talk about, increasing the visibility of the sport and the understanding of these athletes' stories, I think more companies would be willing to step up and say, you know what? I remember in 2002, there was a big commercial push for Derek Parra, right, from Home Depot, and others, of course. But I specifically remember Derek Parra's story on working at Home Depot and being sponsored by them. And I think what you're saying is we need a little bit more of that for our athletes here.
Definitely. And you're spot on. And it's something that we've been working on already. This idea, how great would it be? How many Utah companies would have the opportunity to provide internships for our athletes? And the Home Depot, model was essentially you work 20 hours, they pay you for 40. And setting that same thing up for other companies here in Utah, huge opportunity. For them, and to tell those athlete stories about how we were with this athlete when they really needed the help.
Yeah.
And on top of that, giving these athletes real job training.
Sure.
We talk about it often. It's like these would be the best employees you could ever hope for, right? They work hard.
Yeah.
They're on time. They're disciplined. They're focused. I mean,
yep.
They can do anything.
And they know how to get the job done, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Work under pressure.
Yeah. Intense pressure. You're right. So, well, let's work on getting that story out, right? So,
absolutely.
Tell me about, you talk about the athletes from all over the U.S., right? You mentioned New Jersey and Washington D.C. and Washington State. Like how many athletes are there in the program, I guess, or part of your system, and where do they all come from?
Yeah, we have about 30 plus athletes that are part of our national team. So they're either on the long track national team or the short track national team. And but then you have also kind of a AAA teams that operate at the Oval as well. So there's probably another 30 athletes in that system that are working their way up and trying to get to the national team level. And I mean, we hit some of the hotbeds of skating. The interesting thing, John, is that we have about 60 plus clubs around the country. That's it.
Wow.
That's
not
it.
a lot.
Not a lot.
You have 60 plus like 12-year-old baseball clubs along the Wasatch Front, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And so many of those are actually just run by volunteer coaches who love the sport and want to keep it thriving. The biggest challenge there, I know this isn't really answering the question, but I think it's interesting. The biggest challenge there is that it's access to ice time. And so these clubs, they're fighting with figure skating and hockey in all these areas for ice time. And so it's really tough for them to get more than, a couple hours a week in some cases. So that makes it hard. But the other place, the interesting thing is we've had so many athletes that come from inline skating.
Yeah.
That essentially transition to ice. And so that's Derek Parra's story, right?
Yeah.
He was an inliner in Southern California. And Erin Jackson, who's on our team now, current gold medalist from Beijing, she was an inline skater in Florida. Brittany Bowe, who's won 2 bronze medals for us and still competing, she's from Ocala, Florida. So we've had, I think, probably 4 or 5 athletes from Florida.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. Several from North Carolina, same thing, inline skaters that transition to ice. And then obviously we still have, pretty big bases out in Illinois and Wisconsin. There's still really robust speed skating clubs out there. So those are kind of Minnesota too. That's another hotbed for us.
That makes sense. I mean, it's icy there, for a little longer period than it is here in Utah. So
not as much ice as there used to be, but
true. Yeah. True. What do you see as, well, let me ask this question. How many events are there in long track and then short track speed skating?
How many different races?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the Olympic program in lawn track, it's a fair amount. You have the 500, the 1,000, the 15, 3 or 5K, and then 5 or 10K. So between men and women, that's 10 events there. Plus you have mass start, men and women, so that's 12. And plus you have team pursuit, men and women. So 14 medal opportunity events for us, which is a lot.
So tell me what mass start is.
Mass start is pretty much chaos too. Mass start is kind of short track meets long track. And so 16 skaters go to the line in long track, and they race 16 laps, 400-meter laps. And it's, first 3 across the finish line, that's your podium.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's super fun. But
when that goes to the Olympics, like, how do they select the 16? Is it like everybody kind of pools in, or is it like you've earned points throughout the season to become one of those 16 that gets to participate?
Yeah, correct. So you earn points, and they have so you have actually the last Olympics. It might be different this year, or in 26, but in 22 and 18, essentially had 2 semifinals.
Oh, okay.
And each semifinals had like 16 plus skaters, and you took the top 8 from each semifinal, and they go to the final. But for the World Cup and the annual races, you got it. It's all based on kind of points and getting out of that B group and getting into the A group.
Got it. So how do they earn points? Just winning races, placing in races, things like that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then each country, has a start position. So you automatically can get in as long as you have a qualifying time. You kind of get a start position in that B group, and then that athlete can try and move on up and get to the A group.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Still, it sounds like chaos. 16 people on the ice at the same time.
It is, and it's really interesting because in short track, the referees play a pretty major role.
Yeah.
A lot of final, after the races are over, sometimes it can be upwards of 3 minutes before you get the official results because they're looking at things on video. And in long track for the mass start, they haven't really adopted that system, and so it's more just the referees that are out there looking. So my point being, there's a lot of pushing, a lot of grabbing, a lot of things going on that are just not getting called. And
a lot of fouls, right?
Yeah. And it's a little sore subject for us because Joey Mantilla, U.S. athlete, got 4th in Beijing, and he got 4th because at the finish line, the Korean skater literally had his hand on Joey's shin. So he's making it look like it was a natural kind of motion, but his hand was literally pushing Joey's shin backwards. And that probably cost him a bronze medal. Yeah.
That would be a sore subject for sure. Okay, so 14 in long track, and then how many in short track?
Short track, the 500, the 1,000, the 1,500. And then that's all men and women. And then, so that's 6. And then you have a men's relay, a women's relay. That's 8. And then you have a mixed relay. Okay. So 9 events in short track. So, it's pretty wild. 23 medal events for our athletes at the Olympic Games. It's a lot.
That is a lot. And pretty incredible that the sport has grown, that much that they have so many different events to pursue and be part of. So what's the length of the short track? Like one lap around?
It's 110 meters.
Okay. And then the long track is 400 meters?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So their 500, is 5 laps in short track, and it's 1 lap in long, one lap plus in long track.
Wow. What a difference. I mean, you have to learn how to skate straight in long track, whereas, short track, it's just continuous round. So
a lot of corners in short track.
Does anybody make the jump between short track and long track?
Yeah, most actually, because most of our athletes that are coming up at these clubs, they're all training in hockey rinks. So they all started in short track.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There are only what, 5 ovals in the United States. So just 2 indoor, Salt Lake and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
And then outdoor, you have Lake Placid. And then we have one in Minneapolis. And then there's one actually in Butte, Montana.
Oh, wow. Of all places.
Yeah.
Butte, Montana. Okay.
Yeah.
So when obviously in indoors, you can kind of control the climate and the environment with refrigeration and things like that. But when you're in outdoors, like summer, do they transition to like a concrete track? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And they'll do like rollerblades.
Yep. You got it. And obviously the outdoor tracks have a much shorter season. Lake Placid and Minnesota, they have refrigeration under the long track, but it's still, they have to have the right temperatures before they can commit to doing that. Butte, it's just natural ice. They don't have any refrigeration. So they're literally like flooding the concrete and hoping it freezes,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But even in Salt Lake, it's, it's so great to have incredible partner like the Utah Olympic Oval. But you can imagine how expensive it is to, pay for the ice in the summer months when it's 100 degrees outside. So we're very fortunate that they're a good partner there. We typically put the ice in around July 15th. So it comes out at the end of the season. So last week of March, and then it'll be out until July 15th. We put it back in for the next season.
Oh, interesting. And so then what do you do in the between March and July?
It sits there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a big slab of concrete because we have the running track around that.
Yeah.
So we don't really need to use it. It just gets ready. Just rests.
Yeah. Good. And it's the fastest ice on Earth, right? Still.
Yeah. So, but that's an interesting one because, technically it really doesn't have anything to do with the ice per se.
Okay.
It has to do with the air resistance. And so it's the fastest track because we're at 5,000 plus feet in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And so there's just less air resistance. So,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But that's a little bit, fastest ice on Earth is a much better marketing slogan.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Greatest snow on Earth, fastest ice on Earth. Yeah. We'll take them both.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I, you have your record board at the Oval there in Kearns. And it seems like a lot of the world records or, even the national records have been set at that ice, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's only really 2 altitude tracks that are operating on a consistent basis in the world.
Okay.
Us and Calgary.
Yeah.
But we're a little bit higher than Calgary. And so that's probably the key difference. But yeah, I think we own all but 2 of the long track world records.
Wow.
in the right now.
That's incredible.
It's pretty neat. And it's great because, when you come watch our events and you watch World Cups, pretty good chance that you might see a world record.
Yeah. I remember the last one that I went to, there was a world record set.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Do you host a lot of international athletes that are training in Salt Lake?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have athletes who train here year round from other countries, and then a lot of athletes that'll just come in for a month or something like that to train. Obviously, whenever we host a World Cup, you get a lot of athletes that come in early because they want to train on this ice because it is so different. They're not used to going that fast.
Interesting.
So you can imagine the difference between going into a corner at 30 miles an hour versus going into a corner at 35 miles an hour.
Wow.
So they like it out here. And obviously it's a great place to come train.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting is that they're going that fast. 35 miles an hour. Wow.
Actually closer. I mean, the guys now are getting up to, it's almost 40 miles an hour for the guys in the short distances.
That's flying.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Wow.
On 2 two blades that are
2 blades.
sharper than any knife you have in your drawer.
Which is scary, right? Which is why accidents happen in short track a lot, right? And you need these massive pads to protect yourself from falls,
Exactly. And now the big thing that we have to have is cut proof resistant suits, so that if a blade hits it, that you're not going into the skin.
I remember there was a big accident, Apollo Ono, right? During 2002, where he cut his own leg with it, or somebody cut his leg with the blade.
Well, that was, I think you're referring to J.R. Selsky.
Oh, that's right.
And it was the Olympic trials for 2010.
Okay.
And he cut his leg and literally blood all over the ice, and looked horrible, and maybe that he wouldn't even make it. And that was in, I think, like November of 2009, and he came back to compete at the Vancouver Olympics and ended up winning a silver and bronze medal.
That's amazing. That's one other thing about these athletes that I've learned as I've talked to a lot of them, and is just their resilience, their dedication to the sport, and their resilience in overcoming these major obstacles, broken bones and split legs and all kinds of stuff.
Totally. One of my favorite from recent events was Casey Dawson, who's a lawn tracker who's actually grew up in Park City and was from the Park City Club. And in the Beijing Olympics, he qualified in the Olympic trials. Everything was great, and came back. And at that point, to get into China, the athletes had to get tested like every 3 days. And he tested positive after he got back from Milwaukee, and he had no symptoms.
Yeah.
Tested positive. And we had a month before he was going to leave, essentially. And every time he went down, he tested positive.
Oh my gosh.
And he was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And he ended up missing the plane for opening ceremonies and going to LA with the whole team and team processing, and came in, I think it was like 4 days later, finally tested negative.
Yeah.
Got cleared, got on the plane. But here's the crazy part about it, John. It's like if when he got off the plane in Beijing, you got tested immediately.
Yeah.
If he had tested positive,
he would have been sent back home, right?
Not even. They put him in these, they had these container village.
Oh, geez.
And you would have been stuck there until you tested negative. And who knows?
Yeah.
And to think about that when you say resiliency, right? How tough do you have to be to go like, no, I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm going. And he ended up getting there. I think his if I remember this correctly, I don't think his skates showed up. Like they lost his bag. So he had to literally borrow somebody else's skates. And I think he landed, and it was within 24 hours that he had to compete in his first race in somebody else's skates.
Man. So many obstacles to overcome in that story, right? But he did. And they went on to win a bronze medal in the team pursuit.
But yeah, I mean, that's it, as you said, it's, I think a lot of us would have looked at that and go like, screw that. I'm not going, I'm out.
Yeah.
But
right.
These they are a resilient bunch.
Yeah. So who's the biggest competitor in long track and then in short track on the men's and women's sides? What countries are we competing against all the time?
Yeah. I mean, the Dutch, obviously they dominate the long track. And the challenge there, it's like similar to what I was saying before. Problem with the Dutch is one of their top skaters retires, who's fantastic. Like, okay, great. We finally get a little break. Next person up, just as good.
Yeah.
They're so deep, and we're not. So they're the number one team. Last year we finished, when you look at long track and short track combined, we were the number 2 country in the world behind the Dutch.
Oh, awesome.
And, yeah, it's pretty neat. And, that's where we'd like to be. We go up to Canada's really, really good. They're very deep. They're very good in short track. They're the number one team in short track this year. And they have a good long track squad too. So they're the ones that we keep on our radar that we definitely want to try and beat. But the Dutch are kind of a league above everybody else, just because of their depth. They're good they have people in every single event.
Now, do they what makes them so good? I mean, you see the old, prints of the Dutch skating everywhere. Does that part of their culture? They just grow up on skates?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. I mean, they're only a country of, I think it's 15 million people.
Yeah.
And to give you a comparison, they have like 100,000 people who do speed skating in the Netherlands. We have 2,000.
Yeah. With 380 million people, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that's a big challenge. So it is, I think, soccer, cycling, and speed skating essentially are the Dutch national sports, and they take them very seriously, and they have a lot of pride in them. Yeah. And so, and the strong history. And they also just have, it's interesting. I mean, they are in general a tall group of people.
Yeah.
And that height definitely comes into play in long track. You can have those longer strides. And so I think they're just pool of athletes. It's just so deep.
Which is interesting because when you look at Aaron Jackson or Derek Parra, they're not tall.
No.
Right? They're not tall, and yet they're still competing at the highest levels and winning.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Aaron, obviously, probably a little bit more to somewhat average size for a female. Derek, definitely small.
Yeah.
And you don't see that much anymore. I mean, he was really a unicorn.
Yeah.
What he was able to accomplish at that stature.
How much do you have these former athletes involved, like an Eric Heiden, like a Derek Parra, like an Apollo Ono in the program?
It's pretty neat. They are all always available.
Cool.
For whatever we need. And what really makes me feel great is, former Olympian champions, medalists like Eric Heiden, Dan Jansen, Bonnie Blair, Rusty Smith, who won a medal in 2002. They all give back. They support us with their own dollars
awesome.
Because they know how hard it is. So it's a really tight knit family, which makes it super cool. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, as you know, another one like Catherine Rainey Norman, who, has given so much time and effort to the Olympic bid and to speed skating in general. So it's really neat. And you're humbled by how much these great athletes give back to the sport.
Yeah. Well, Ted, this has been awesome conversation for me. Appreciate your time. Anything that you want, people to know about the program, just speed skating in general, how they can support, upcoming World Cup events that are here?
Yeah, no, definitely. Unfortunately we're our World Cup this year. We're in Milwaukee in a couple weeks. So if any of your listeners want to come out to Milwaukee, they should do that. January 31st through February 2nd should be a fun show out there. And then we'll have Long Track World Cup next in the fall of 25. Okay. So not that far away.
Not that far, yeah.
At the Utah Olympic Oval. So definitely come out. Visit us at usspeedskating.org. Great opportunities there on how you can support and become part of our fan group. And encourage everybody to come out and check it out. It's one thing to watch on television, but with most sports, it's completely different when you experience it in person. So
that is true. I will attest to that.
You can feel the wind, right?
Yeah, and bring your cowbell to cheer
Absolutely.
Team on, right? So awesome. Great. Well, Ted, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate what you do for not only the sport, but for the community here in Utah and we appreciate the partnership. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. Thanks for giving us the platform to tell our story.
You bet. You bet. My pleasure. Okay. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Inside the Rinks. We encourage you to rate and share the podcast. And if there is any topic you would like us to cover, leave us a comment. See you next time.